Hey gang, today I wanted to take you through my process for a heavy metal minimalist style Iron Hand. I will make more for other legions, chapters, and factions, and cover theory like lighting and composition all on this channel. Step 1. Base coats. For the black areas, I'm using Blighted Green from the Army Painter. If you prefer Warhammer brand paint, then either Incubi Darkness or Caliban Green will be good instead. Black can be simple. You could just prime this guy black and then do some highlights and be done. But I find for Iron Hands they have this oil-like sheen to their black, so I like to use a green undercoat and a black top coat and then a dark purple to highlight. Along with the oily colours using the complementary colour pairing of green and purple, it will make the black look more rich and deep. The green might seem too dark, especially with the Nuln Oil for this to matter, but it will be subtle and it will make a difference. This undercoat is so we don't need to buy more shades other than Nuln, so instead of using the green shade on here and a black shade on the silver, we can just use Nuln Oil all over and trust the undercoat to tint it. This base layer doesn't need to be perfect, but try and make the coverage uniform. This will help in step 3, as patchy base coats may show through the top coat later, especially when we were doing the thin layers of top coat to let the undercoat tint show through. For the trim, I'm using gunmetal from AK. Lead Belcher from Warhammer is also pretty good. We just wanted very dark silver here that will be made a touch darker from the Nuln Oil over the top. You should be careful here, as any spilt glitter paint on the black panels will be easily shown through the shade and through the black top coat. If you do go over, make sure you go back with the green to cover any metallic mistakes. This wouldn't be as important if we weren't doing that thin top coat layer over the top, but as we're working towards the more sheer black to allow for that slight green tint to make that oily refraction illusion that we want, I would be a little cautious over leaving mistakes to sit. Step 2. Nuln Oil. This bit does not need to be careful. Just slop it on, puddle it in the edges and recesses for darker shadows, and try to do entire panels in as few strokes, otherwise you may get tide lines as it dries. Make sure to properly shake your Nuln Oil for a minute, as I've had a couple times I didn't and it's dried glossy because I didn't mix in the pigment enough with the medium fluid. While this dries, make a cup of tea and think about how your Primarch had a very tragic and sad death, unlike another Primarch who was a lil bit. Like this video, subscribe, and potentially become a channel member to get exclusive channels in my Discord where I post photos of my kitten and take requests for tutorials to make. I also stream painting on here and Twitch if you want to hang out and ask questions or watch me be bad at Space Marine 2 and other games. Step 3. Top coats. For the black, I'm using Matte Black by the Army Painter. Warhammer's Abaddon Black is the alternate here. I watered down this black quite a lot and just did thin layers to build up the pigment. After each layer, I recommend letting it dry and then checking under a lamp to see if you can still see the green tint very slightly. This may take 2 or 3 goings over to achieve. On pieces like the pauldron with trim, these are called inside corners for the black. I leave about a millimeter or a half millimeter gap between my top coat and corner crease to keep that slight green outline from the trim and to save me from accidentally going up the wall up onto the trim. If you do a couple of thin layers, leaving the coverage kind of patchy and uneven, this can look more battle-worn, and you can use those brushstroke lines and patchinesses to help plan out any weathering or battle damage you want to add. With this oily effect we're going for, this might look less battle-worn and more messy, so I'd encourage caution on this. Be most careful on the recessed armor, such as on his underarm, under his elbow and wrist plate, to not get the black on the perpendicular sides of the elbow and extruded surfaces. I'm still trying to keep that 1mm or so border on the inside corners, but don't worry if there is not much gap and it gets too thin, as long as those perpendicular sides stay clean and dark. For the trim, I'm just using the same metallics I used on the undercoat, Gunmetal by AK or Lead Belcher from Warhammer. This should just bring up the silver a little bit from the Nuln, but keep it dark. You could skip this bit and just have Nuln silver, which will leave you with a dulled down trim rather than more shiny. Just if you do that, be a little more sparse on the highlights so they aren't super overly bright. Trim only has outside corners. This means the panel reaches a cliff rather than a wall, so if you use the side of your brush along the top, you shouldn't get overflow down the cliff sides. Try and keep the sides of the trim the dark shaded colour. It's hard to fix this if you spill over, as it is that base colour plus Nuln Oil. I recommend to pick a plane to be the top and then keep perpendicular sides dark over the whole mini. Step 4. Highlights. On the black, I'm using Terrestrial Titan by the Army Painter, but Warhammer brand Nagaroth Knight is your closest match otherwise. Here, I'm essentially outlining all my top coat with outside edges, or like on this elbow panel, and sculpted edges in the middle of it. Because we're doing these over the top coat, it can make a mess, and we can go back over this with more top coat colour. However, because we have made this green-black oil slick base and top coat, if you need to go over with the black to fix the highlights, this may cause splotches on the black where the green is more covered from fixes. So go all over and edge up all those edges. I tend to water down my paint a bit for this just so I can use a smaller brush so the paint doesn't dry before I put it on the mini. If you find the edges too odd, mix in some black until you find a shade that you're happy with. Adding more top coat will lead to more subtle edges. This is probably the bit that took the longest, as I wanted to be careful to not have to go back and fix them and cause patchiness I mentioned earlier. Since it is a mini, you probably won't notice this unless you're 5 centimeters away from your paint job, so don't worry too much, I'm just a little bit obsessive about it. If you're doing an entire army like this, I probably wouldn't recommend sub-assembling, but it does help. If you're going into a fully built and glued mini, you only need to do step 3 onwards on parts you can easily reach with a brush. This will by accident make a nice shadow area behind guns and underarms that will make him look a little more dramatic and lit. However, with the green, it might be a bit much in terms of how much green is left showing. With sub-assembly, you can get every surface to look flat and uniform with lighting, so ending with a more cartoony or classic heavy metal result. For the trim, I used natural steel from AK. Warhammer Runefang steel would be the equivalent. I wouldn't go all the way up to Storm Silver unless you wanted super bright white silver highlights. Try and feather out these highlight spots so you don't get a harsh tide line, which can look wrong and be glaringly obvious with metallics, especially if you chose to skip the top coat. The rest of the owl. From this video, learn the things and put it to use on the rest of the mini. This style is good for quick, consistent minis that look good with only a handful of paints. In total, this arm took me about 15 to 20 minutes, not including the Nuln Oil drying tea break. When I painted the rest of the mini afterwards, it took about the same time as the single arm, maybe a little bit longer, as it is very simple and it's meant to be fast. So this is my fully finished Iron Hands Infernus Marine in this style with all of his markings free-handed on, pardon the pun. You can use transfers, I'm just lazy, I don't have a sheet for him to use either, but if you do use them, remember to use a matte varnish over the top to get rid of that shininess. And here is a list of all the things I used in this video. Again, I will make more videos for lenses, various guns, and freehanding hacks, so don't panic if yours doesn't look like mine. I don't tend to use transfers, but I can cover those in a video as well if needed. As always, thanks for watching, check out my other hobby content or my dumbass gaming content on the main channel. Like, sub, leave a comment how you got on, Discord is in the description, and see ya.